Whenever a major conflict kicks off, our eyes go straight to the price at the gas pump. But what about the price of milk, or bread, or eggs? We're going to break down how this turmoil in Iran could really hit your grocery budget, not tomorrow, but over the next 6 months. It's the first question everyone asks, right? You see oil prices spike on the news, and you just instinctively brace for impact at the checkout line. But the answer, well, it's a little more complicated, and honestly, way more interesting than you'd think. It's not really a question of if you'll feel it, but when, and more importantly, how. All right, so let's get into it. The first thing you've got to understand is that this is not your typical food price shock. Nope, this is a completely different animal. Think about it this way. When there's a drought, maybe the price of corn goes up, so you switch and buy less stuff with corn syrup. Simple enough. But an energy shock? That's a systemic hit. It doesn't pick and choose. It puts pressure on the entire food system all at the same time. And this right here shows you why you can't just substitute your way out of it. Every single truck bringing food to your store, it runs on diesel. That plastic wrap on your veggies or the bag your chips come in, petrochemicals. The freezers and refrigerators keeping everything from spoiling, that's just pure energy consumption. Even the act of cooking and preparing processed foods uses massive amounts of energy. There is literally no low-energy food aisle you can run to. Okay, so we know energy is the big problem here, but where does it actually hit the hardest? Most of us, we assume it's all about the farmers' costs, their tractors and fertilizer, but let's actually deconstruct your food dollar and find the real cost driver. Just look at this number for a second. 15.9 cents. So for every single dollar you hand over at the grocery store, what piece of the puzzle do you think this little 15.9 cents represents? And here it is. That's the farm share. The person actually growing the food gets just under 16 cents of your dollar. The other 84 cents, that all goes to what the USDA calls the marketing system. And that's everything else. All the processing, the packaging, the transport, the labor. And guess what that entire system runs on? Energy. So the impact is huge. It's broad, but it is not immediate. And this brings us to a really crucial point, the time lag. You're not going to walk into the grocery store tomorrow and see prices have shot through the roof. And here's why. A shock to oil prices, well, it has to travel a really long way before it ever gets to you. First, it makes transport and packaging more expensive. Then, all the big food processors have to go back and adjust their contracts. After that, the wholesale prices start to go up. And only at the very, very end of that long chain does the price on the shelf you're looking at finally change. And you can really see that delay laid out here. The oil shock happens on day one, but the price you actually pay at the store, it won't fully reflect that shock for 6, maybe even 12 months. It's like there's a buffer. But remember, a buffer isn't a shield. The hit is still coming. And now we get to the part that drives everybody crazy. This delay we talked about, it works both ways, but it's not symmetrical. And there's a well-known phenomenon in economics that describes this perfectly. It's called rockets and feathers. And yeah, it means exactly what it sounds like. When costs go up, prices eventually shoot up like a rocket. But when those costs finally come back down, prices just kind of float down ever so slowly, like a feather. So here's the logic. Prices rise slowly because of things like long-term supply contracts and competition between stores. But they fall even slower. Why? Well, for one, there are menu costs, and that's literally the cost and the hassle of changing every single price tag and sign in a store. Plus, nobody wants to be the first grocer to cut prices and give up those nice high margins. The result of all this is that the impact of the conflict will probably stick around on your receipt for a year or more after it's faded from the headlines. So, with all that in mind, what can we actually expect? I mean, what's the number? Well, the best way to try and forecast the future is to take a hard look at the past. So let's benchmark this against some recent history. We've got two really useful comparisons. The 2007-08 crisis was a pure energy shock, which makes it a great parallel for what's happening now. Then you have the 2022 Ukraine invasion. That was an energy shock plus a massive green disruption. So that's a good upper bound for us, sort of a worst-case scenario, since Iran isn't a major green supplier. So what's the bottom line? Looking at what happened in the past, a shock like this could add somewhere between 3 and 6 percentage points to food inflation. This green line here on the chart kind of projects the most likely path, with the peak impact hitting us all about 6 to 8 months from right now. When it's all said and done, this entire forecast really boils down to just two things. First, the duration of the conflict. How long this whole energy disruption actually lasts. And second, the stickiness of prices. How long those higher costs stay baked into the system, even after the conflict is over. And hey, if you want to track this for yourself, here are the three things to keep an eye on. First, watch crude oil prices over the next month or two. That's the critical window. Second, look at the monthly food price reports from the USDA. And finally, keep an eye on the Producer Price Index, or PPI. That measures costs for the food producers, and it's the best early warning signal for what's heading to grocery store shelves. And that really leaves us with the final thought here. The news cycle, it's going to move on. The headlines about this conflict will eventually fade away. But because of those lags and that price stickiness we just talked about, the real question is, how many more months after that will it take for the impact to finally fade from your grocery bill?